The metallic taste of blood filled my mouth. My head throbbed like someone was banging a drum inside my skull, each beat sending a wave of pain. I opened my eyes, but everything was blurry, distorted. I was surrounded by twisted metal, a tangle of wires and shredded upholstery. The strong smell of burnt fuel invaded my nose, mixing with the scent of damp earth and something else. Something I couldn't quite identify but found deeply unsettling. Was I on a plane? A crashed plane? Shards of memories, sharp as broken glass, cut through my mind. I remembered sitting by the window, watching the clouds below, fluffy and cotton-like. I remembered dozing off, lulled by the soft hum of the engines. Then, chaos. A violent jolt, screams, the plane plummeting, the feeling of freefall, and darkness. With what felt like superhuman effort, I freed myself from the wreckage pinning me down. Every inch of my body protested, each movement bringing a fresh wave of pain. I had to get out of there. I needed to figure out what had happened. Dragging myself out of the mangled fuselage, I stumbled into the blinding daylight. That's when I realized I wasn't in an ordinary place. Around me stretched a dense forest, its towering, twisted trees covered in thick, dark moss. The air was hot and heavy, thick with the smell of decaying vegetation and that strange, sulfur-like odor I couldn't shake. And then I saw it. In the distance, rising above the treetops, stood the imposing silhouette of a volcano. Its dark, rocky slope was streaked with fiery red veins, like scars on scorched skin. A thin, gray plume of smoke rose from its crater, slowly dissipating into the blue sky. An island. I was on a volcanic island. Alone. Or at least that's what I thought. She's awake. The voice, soft but firm, made me spin around. Emerging from the forest, moving as if they were part of it, were 3 figures in long, dark robes. Their faces were hidden under hoods, but I could feel their stares, intense and piercing. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice coming out as a hoarse whisper. They didn't answer. They just kept coming closer, surrounding me. Before I could react, they grabbed me, lifting me off the ground with alarming ease. I tried to fight, to scream, but my strength was gone. I was completely at their mercy. "Do not fear, daughter of the hidden sun," one of them said, their voice now carrying an almost reverent tone. "We've been waiting for you." Daughter of the hidden sun? What did that even mean? I was just an 18-year-old girl, lost, hurt, and scared. I wasn't some mystical figure, some savior, some chosen one. They carried me through the forest along narrow, winding paths that looked like they'd been carved out centuries ago. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the rustle of leaves under their feet and the frantic pounding of my own heart. As they carried me, I started piecing things together, trying to make sense of how I'd ended up here. My name is Maya. I was on my way to visit my aunt, who lives in a coastal town. It was supposed to be a vacation, a chance to relax, have fun, forget my problems for a while. But the plane, the crash, everything had changed. "Where are you taking me?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady despite the fear consuming me. "To the temple," one of them replied curtly, "to meet your destiny." Destiny? I didn't have a destiny. I just wanted to go home, to my life, to my family. But as we drew closer to this so-called temple, I realized that going home was becoming a more distant dream with every step. After what felt like an eternity, the forest opened into a clearing, and there, carved into the side of the volcano, stood the temple. It was an imposing structure made of dark volcanic stone, covered in carvings and strange symbols I couldn't decipher. A monumental staircase led up to a massive doorway framed by 2 colossal statues, winged figures with stern, menacing expressions. Around the temple, dozens of people in the same dark robes moved about, performing tasks I couldn't understand. Some carried lit torches, others bore offerings, fruits, flowers, and objects I couldn't identify. The air thrummed with a strange energy, a mix of solemnity and anticipation, making me even more uneasy. They led me inside the temple, through the massive doorway, into a vast, dimly lit hall. The only light came from torches mounted on the walls, casting dancing, elongated shadows that made the space both beautiful and terrifying. In the center of the hall stood a stone altar, also covered in carvings and symbols. And before the altar, standing with arms outstretched in a gesture of welcome, was someone who seemed to be the leader of the group. He was older than the others, with long white hair and a beard that reached his chest. His dark, deep-set eyes seemed to hold centuries' worth of knowledge. His robe was more elaborate than the others, adorned with precious stones and threads of gold that shimmered in the torchlight. "Welcome, daughter of the hidden sun," he said, his voice echoing through the hall. "We've been waiting for you for a long time." He stepped closer, and I could feel the power radiating from him, a presence so intense it was almost tangible. I'm not who you think I am," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "I'm just Maya. I was on a plane that crashed. I just want to go home." The man smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. "You are who you were born to be, child," he said. "The prophecy is clear. You are the daughter of the hidden sun, the one who will bring the cosmic rebirth, the one who will guide us into a new era." Cosmic rebirth? A new era? None of it made any sense. I was more confused and more terrified than ever. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, trying to step back, but the followers holding me kept me firmly in place. "You will understand soon enough," the man replied. "The eclipse approaches, and with it, your destiny will be revealed." Eclipse? What eclipse? I had no idea what was happening, but one thing was clear. I needed to get out of there. I had to escape this place, these people, and the destiny they were trying to force on me. In the days that followed, I was treated as a mix of prisoner and deity. They gave me new clothes, light white robes made from a fabric unlike anything I'd ever seen. They fed me fruits and vegetables I didn't recognize but found surprisingly delicious. They taught me about their beliefs, the island's history, and the prophecy of the daughter of the hidden sun. According to them, the island was a sacred place, a point of convergence for cosmic energies. The volcano, which they called Father Sun, was the source of this energy, the source of life and renewal. And every 1,000 years during a lunar eclipse, the Father Sun would unite with the Mother Moon, creating a moment of supreme power, a moment of cosmic rebirth. And I, the daughter of the hidden sun, was the key to this rebirth. I was the chosen one, born under the sign of the hidden sun, said to possess the power to channel the volcano's energy and the moon's influence, guiding the cult into a new era of enlightenment and prosperity. But there was one detail, a chilling revelation they took their time to share. When they finally did, it froze me to the bone. For the cosmic rebirth to occur, for the energy to be unleashed and the new era to begin, I had to be freed from my earthly vessel. In other words, I was to be the centerpiece of a ritual that would channel this energy. "It is a great honor, daughter of the hidden sun," the cult leader said in a tone he probably thought was comforting. "You will be remembered forever as the one who guided us into the light." But I didn't want to be remembered. I didn't want to be honored. I wanted to live. At that moment, I made a decision. I would fight. I would not be a pawn in their ritual, an offering on their altar. I would find a way to escape, to survive, to return home. Escaping, however, wouldn't be easy. The temple was a fortress, and the island, a natural prison. I was surrounded by fanatical followers who believed blindly in their prophecy and my supposed destiny. And looming above it all was the volcano, a constant, oppressive reminder of the power they worshipped and the danger I faced. I began to observe, to study, to plan. I learned the followers' habits, their rituals, their patrol routes. I explored the temple, searching for hidden passages, escape routes, anything that might help me. I discovered the temple was far older than I'd imagined. Beneath it lay a network of tunnels and underground chambers stretching for miles beneath the island, connecting the temple to other structures, natural caves, and even hot springs. It was a labyrinth, built over centuries, perhaps millennia. During one of my explorations, I stumbled upon a hidden chamber behind a false wall, its carvings telling a story very different from the one the followers preached. It spoke of an ancient destructive power tied to the volcano's lava, one that had been sealed away long ago by an earlier civilization. According to the carvings, If this power were released unchecked, it could trigger a catastrophic eruption, obliterating not just the island but everything within hundreds of miles. A global disaster of unimaginable scale. That's when the terrible truth hit me. The cult's ritual, the cosmic rebirth, wasn't about enlightenment or prosperity. It was about unleashing this destructive power. They planned to use the eclipse's energy, along with my supposed connection to the Father Sun and the Mother Moon, to break the seal containing this power and unleash chaos upon the world. They were mad. Fanatics consumed by a twisted prophecy, convinced they were fulfilling a divine mission, when in reality, they were about to bring about unprecedented destruction. I had to stop them, not just to save my own life, but to prevent the cult from releasing this devastating power on the world. But how? How could I, a simple girl stranded on a volcanic island, surrounded by fanatical followers, possibly stop a millennia-old ritual and avert a global catastrophe? I didn't have all the answers, but I knew I had to try. If I didn't act, no one else would. As the day of the eclipse drew near, I began crafting my plan. A desperate, risky plan that was my only hope. I would use the cult's own tunnels, their own knowledge, and their unwavering belief against them. I would sabotage the ritual. I would stop the cosmic rebirth. I was going to save the world, or die trying. The days leading up to the eclipse were a blur of tension and preparation. I moved like a shadow through the temple's corridors, always alert to the watchful eyes of the cultists. I studied the carvings, deciphered symbols, and uncovered the secrets of that cursed place. I learned that the ritual would take place at the volcano's summit, in its crater, during the peak of the lunar eclipse. They believed that at that exact moment, the energy of the Father Sun and Mother Moon would reach its zenith, and that I, the daughter of the hidden sun, would be the perfect vessel to channel this energy, the catalyst to break the seal and unleash the imprisoned power. My plan was simple but incredibly dangerous. I had to reach the volcano's summit before them, locate the exact spot where the seal lay, and destroy or damage it enough to ensure the ritual would fail. The odds were grim. I had no weapons, no training, no allies. All I had was my wits, my courage, and an unshakable determination to survive and stop their madness. The night before the eclipse, as the cultists prepared for the ritual with prayers and chants, I put my plan into motion. Wearing one of their dark robes to blend in, I slipped out of the temple and headed for the volcano. The climb was brutal. The path was steep and rocky, and the air grew thinner with every step. The stench of sulfur grew stronger, burning my throat and eyes, but I couldn't stop. I had to keep going. As I climbed, I saw the moon, full and silver, rising in the sky. Beside it, a dark shadow began to creep across its surface, slowly devouring its light. The eclipse had begun. When I reached the summit, I was exhausted but resolute. The crater loomed before me, a gaping, menacing abyss radiating intense heat and a reddish glow, like the mountain itself was alive and breathing. Following the carving's instructions, I found the ritual site, a stone platform in the crater's center, connected to the edge by a narrow natural bridge. In the platform's center was the seal, a perfect circle divided into two halves, one light and one dark, representing the sun and moon, surrounded by intricate ominous symbols. I knew what I had to do. I had to destroy that seal, stop the eclipse's energy from being channeled into it. But how? Then I saw them. Clay jars scattered across the platform. The cultists had brought them for the ritual, and I recognized the dark, viscous liquid inside. Lava. They planned to use the volcano's own lava to fuel the ritual, amplifying the eclipse's energy. But what if I turned their weapon against them? What if I used the lava to destroy the seal? It was a crazy idea, reckless and dangerous, but it was my only chance. With trembling hands, I grabbed one of the jars and hurled it with all my strength at the seal. The jar shattered, spilling lava across the platform. The seal hissed and smoked, its surface writhing like it was being eaten away by acid. But it wasn't enough. I needed more. Jar after jar, I threw them at the seal, the molten liquid spreading into a glowing lake around it. The heat was unbearable. My skin burned, my eyes stung, and my lungs begged for fresh air. but I couldn't stop. I had to keep going. That's when they arrived. The cultists, led by the white-haired elder, appeared at the crater's edge, their faces illuminated by the lava's fiery glow. They saw me, standing in the middle of the platform, surrounded by flames, and they understood what I was doing. "Stop!" the old man shouted, his furious voice echoing through the crater. "You don't know what you're doing. You'll destroy us all." "I'm saving us all," I shouted back, my voice hoarse but resolute. "You're the ones who don't know what you're doing. You're about to unleash a power you can't control." But they didn't listen. They pressed forward, crossing the natural bridge toward the platform, determined to stop me and complete the ritual at any cost. I was cornered. There was nowhere to run. The lava spread, the seal crumbled, and the followers drew closer. My plan had failed. I was going to die there at the top of that volcano, and the world would be consumed by the madness of their cult. But then, something unexpected happened. As the first follower stepped onto the platform, the lava reacted. It stirred, rose up as if alive, and attacked. The follower screamed, a sound of agony and terror, as the lava engulfed him, dragged him down, consumed him. Then another tried to advance, and another, and another. Each was met with the same fate. The lava struck them down, burned them, pulled them into its depths as though it were protecting the seal, the island, the world from their insanity. I watched, horrified yet mesmerized, as the lava did what I couldn't. It stopped the ritual, destroyed the cult, and saved the world. But at what cost? The volcano began to quake. The ground shook beneath my feet. Cracks opened across the platform, and lava began to surge from them, like blood from an open wound. The old man, realizing all was lost, screamed one final curse, a promise of vengeance, before he too was consumed by the volcano's fury. I was alone now, standing in the crater's center as the mountain came alive around me. I knew it was the end. There was no escape. The lava would soon reach me, and I would go down with the cult, with their ritual, with their madness. I closed my eyes, bracing for the impact, the heat, the pain. But instead, I felt something cold and wet against my face. I opened my eyes to see it was raining. A torrential downpour fell from the sky like a flood. The rain quenched the lava, extinguished the flames, and slowly, the trembling earth began to settle. The volcano, which seemed moments from erupting, grew calm. The eruption that had seemed inevitable was contained. And somehow, against all odds, I survived. I don't know how or why the rain came. Maybe it was just a coincidence, a quirk of nature. Or maybe, just maybe, it was something more. Perhaps the island itself, the father-son, turned against the cult, against their ritual, against their madness. Maybe I wasn't the daughter of the hidden sun, but the island knew I was the only one who tried to protect it, the only one who tried to stop the destruction. And for that, it spared me. It doesn't matter. What matters is that I was alive, and the world was safe. I descended the mountain, my body exhausted and my mind racing, as the rain continued to fall, washing over the island, over my fears, over my tears. When I reached the beach, I saw a boat approaching, a rescue boat sent to search for survivors of the plane crash. They found me, took me away from that cursed island, back to civilization, back home. The story I told the authorities was a simplified version of what really happened. I spoke of the crash, the island, and the cult, but I left out the more fantastical details. The details they wouldn't believe, the details I could hardly believe myself. They considered me a heroine, a survivor, a lucky girl. And I accepted the praises, the gratitude, the honors, but deep down, I knew the truth. I wasn't a heroine. I was just a girl who had found herself in the wrong place at the wrong time and had done what needed to be done to survive and prevent a catastrophe. But I would never forget the island, the volcano, the cult, the ritual. I would never forget the power that had been unleashed and the power that had been contained. I would never forget the sacrifice of those consumed by the lava and the sacrifice of those who had fought alongside me, even if only briefly. Above all, I would never forget the lesson I had learned, that human madness, greed, and thirst for power can be as destructive as the forces of nature. and that sometimes the only way to combat these forces is with courage, determination, and a deep, unshakable belief in humanity. Life went on. I returned home, to my family, to my friends. I finished my studies, started a career, tried to lead a normal life. But the island was always there, in my thoughts, in my dreams, a constant reminder of what I had lived through, what I had lost, what I had learned. And from time to time, when I look at the night sky and see the full moon shining, I can't help but wonder if, somewhere on that distant island, the volcano still slumbers, guarding its secrets, waiting for the day it will awaken once more. And I pray, with all my might, that when that day comes, there will be someone there, someone like me, someone brave enough, determined enough, human enough to stop it. Because the fate of the world, as I had learned the hard way, might depend on it. Normalcy, as I would soon discover, was a fragile illusion, a thin layer of ice over a deep, dark lake of memories and terrors. I tried, really tried, to resume my life, to move on, to leave the island and its horrors behind. But the island didn't let me go. The nightmares became frequent, vivid, terrifying. I relived the accident, the ascent of the volcano, the ritual, the lava consuming the followers, the look of disappointment on the cult leader's face before he was swallowed by the flames. But in the dreams, there was something more, something I hadn't seen, but that now seeped into my nights like a dark stain spreading across a white cloth. I saw the darkness, the entity the cult had tried to release, no longer an amorphous mass, but a colossal shadow, humanoid with glowing red eyes, rising from the volcano's crater, growing, expanding, until it covered the entire island, the entire sky, the entire world. And in every dream, the shadow spoke to me, not with words, but with a voice that echoed in my mind, a voice that promised power, promised vengeance, promised an end to all pain, all suffering, all existence. I would wake up in a panic, drenched in sweat, my heart racing, the shadow's voice still echoing in my mind. I tried to convince myself they were just dreams, mere remnants of trauma, but deep down, I knew it was something more. The island was calling me back. The darkness was calling me back. And then, the signs began. At first, subtle. Objects moving on their own, distant whispers when I was alone, the constant feeling of being watched. Then, more evident. Electronics breaking without explanation, lights flickering and going out, shadows stretching in the corners of my vision, taking familiar, threatening shapes. I saw the old cult leader in glass reflections, in mirrors, in puddles of water. He stared at me with eyes full of hatred, his mouth moving in a silent curse. I saw the followers, their burned and twisted bodies, reaching out toward me as if they wanted to grab me, pull me into their torment. And I saw the shadow, the darkness, always there in the background, growing, strengthening, waiting for the right moment to act. I tried to ignore it, tried to deny it, tried to convince myself I was going insane. But reality was inescapable. The island had marked me. The ritual, even interrupted, had forged a connection between me and that place, between me and that entity. And now, it was coming for me. Fear became my constant companion. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't focus. I withdrew from my friends, my family, unable to explain what was happening, unable to share the burden I carried. I was alone, alone with my fears, alone with my nightmares, alone with the darkness closing in. It was then that I decided I had to do something. I couldn't live like this anymore, running, hiding, waiting for the inevitable. I needed to understand what was happening, needed to find a way to free myself from this curse. I had to go back to the island. The decision was the hardest I had ever made. It meant facing my fears, reliving my traumas, returning to the place that had become the epicenter of my nightmares. It meant risking my life, my sanity, perhaps even my soul. But I saw no other choice. The darkness was consuming me, and the only way to fight it was to face it on its own ground. Surprisingly, finding a boat and a pilot willing to take me to the island was easy. Perhaps news of my heroism had spread, or perhaps it was just luck. Or maybe, as a dark part of me suspected, the darkness itself was facilitating my return, drawing me back into the trap. The journey was torment. The sea was rough, the sky dark and stormy, and as we approached the island, the sense of dread intensified, as if the ocean itself were trying to prevent me from reaching my destination. When I finally landed on the beach, the island greeted me with a deathly silence. The volcano loomed in the distance, its silhouette imposing and menacing, a constant reminder of the power slumbering beneath the surface. The temple was just as I had left it, in ruins, abandoned, yet still heavy with a dark and oppressive energy. The underground tunnels, now familiar, guided me through the bowels of the island, as if I were being led by an invisible force. And at the center of it all, in the volcano's crater, I found it. The darkness. It was there, waiting for me, just as it had been in my dreams. A colossal shadow, humanoid with glowing red eyes, rising from the lava, growing, expanding, until it filled the entire crater. "You've returned," the shadow said, its voice a whisper that seemed to come from all directions at once. "I knew you would return." "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice trembling but steady. "I want what was promised to me," the shadow replied. "I want what you denied me. I want the world." And then, I understood. The cult's ritual hadn't merely attempted to unleash the darkness. It had tried to imprison it, control it, use it for their own ends. But they had failed. They had underestimated the power they were dealing with. And I, by interrupting the ritual, had freed the entity, but also enraged it. I had become the focus of its wrath, its vengeance, its desire to consume everything. "I won't let you do this," I said, mustering all the courage I had left. "I will fight you. I will stop you." The shadow laughed, a cold, cruel laugh that made the ground tremble beneath my feet. "You cannot stop me," the entity said. "I am inevitable. I am the end of all things. And you, little human, are merely an obstacle in my path." And then it attacked, not with physical strength, but with something far worse. It attacked my mind. Images of destruction flooded my thoughts. Cities in flames, oceans boiling, skies darkened by ash clouds, people screaming, crying, begging for mercy as the darkness consumed them one by one. I saw my friends, my family, everyone I loved, being devoured by the shadow. Their faces twisted in agony, their eyes accusing me, blaming me for their fate. It was too much. I couldn't bear it. I fell to my knees, hands clutching my head, trying to block out the images, trying to silence the voice, trying to hold on to my sanity. "Give up, Maya," the shadow whispered. "Join me. Let me end your suffering. Let me end the suffering of the world." And for a moment I almost gave in. The pain was unbearable, the guilt overwhelming, the darkness so tempting in its promise of peace, of oblivion. But then, I remembered. I remembered the island, the volcano, the cult, the ritual. I remembered the ghosts, the man in the hat, the sacrifice that had been made to contain that evil. I remembered my friends, my family, the world I loved, the world I needed to save. And above all, I remembered myself, the scared girl who had survived a plane crash, who had faced her fears, who had fought against the impossible. I wasn't a heroine, I wasn't chosen, I was just Maya, but I was human. And as long as I was human, as long as I had hope, as long as I had love, I wouldn't give up. I wouldn't surrender. I stood, my legs shaky but a newfound determination shining in my eyes. "No," I said, my voice weak at first but gaining strength with every word. "I will not give up. I will not join you. I will fight, until the end." The shadow roared, its fury shaking the island. But this time, I didn't back down. I stood firm, facing the darkness, ready to confront it, ready to accept my fate, whatever it might be. And then, something unexpected happened. From the depths of the crater, from the heart of the volcano, a light began to shine. A golden light, warm and familiar, the light of the Father Sun. The light grew brighter, expanding, pushing the darkness back. The shadow recoiled, its roar turning into a wail of pain. And from the light, a figure emerged. It was the man in the hat, the guardian of the portal, the protector of the island. He was different now, no longer a shadow, no longer a ghost, but a being of pure light, radiant and powerful. He looked at me, and in his eyes I saw not disappointment, not regret, but pride and hope. He extended a hand toward me, and I understood. I was not alone. I had never been. The island was with me. The volcano was with me. The spirit of the guardian was with me, and together we would fight. The final battle was unlike anything I had ever experienced. It wasn't a physical fight, but a war of energies, of wills, of light against darkness. The man in the hat, the guardian, led the charge, wielding the light of the Father-Son like a sword, cutting through the darkness, dispelling the shadows. And I, guided by him, channeled all my strength, all my courage, all my humanity to fuel the light, to strengthen it, to make it invincible. The battle stretched on for hours, or perhaps just mere seconds. Time held no meaning in that place, in that moment. All that mattered was the fight, light against darkness, hope against despair. And finally, when I thought I could endure no more, when my strength was fading, when the darkness seemed on the verge of consuming me, the light prevailed. With one final cry of agony, the shadow dissipated, dissolved into nothingness, as if it had never existed. The volcano, which had trembled and roared throughout the battle, calmed. The island, once cloaked in darkness, was bathed in the golden glow of the rising sun. I collapsed to my knees, exhausted but victorious. I had survived. We had won. The guardian, now a faint shimmer, approached me. He didn't speak, but I could feel his gratitude, his relief, his peace. And then, with one last look at me, he disappeared, merging with the sunlight, returning to his eternal rest. I remained there, alone in the crater of the volcano, as the sun rose on the horizon, painting the sky with vibrant colors, promising a new day, a new beginning. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know if the darkness would return someday, if the island would once again become a threat, if I would have to fight again. But in that moment, I felt no fear, because I knew that even in the deepest shadows, light always finds a way to shine. And I knew that as long as I lived, as long as I had hope, as long as I had love, I would be ready to face it. I descended the mountain, leaving behind the island, the volcano, the temple, the ghosts, the darkness. I was returning home, not as a heroine, not as someone chosen, but as a survivor, as a girl who had stared into the abyss and found within herself the strength not to surrender, as a human. And that, I realized, was all I needed to be. Life, I knew, would never be the same. The island had changed me, marked me, transformed me. But I was no longer a victim. I was a fighter, a guardian, a bearer of light. And as the sun rose on the horizon, I knew I was ready for whatever the future held. Because I had faced the darkness, and I had won. But the victory, as I would soon discover, came at a terrible cost. A cost I would carry for the rest of my life. When I returned home, I found that 3 years had passed. 3 years lost to the island, battling the darkness, while the world moved on without me. My family, my friends, they had all assumed I was dead. They had mourned me, cried for me, and moved on with their lives, bearing the pain of my absence. And now, I was back, a stranger in a familiar world, a ghost from the past, haunting those I loved. They tried to welcome me, to understand me, to accept me back into their lives. But the gap was too wide. Time, pain, experience, it had separated us. I tried to fit in, to reclaim my life, to be the girl I was before the crash, before the island, before the darkness. But it was impossible. I was changed, haunted, broken. And in the depths of my eyes, they saw the reflection of the shadow I had fought. And they were afraid. I became a recluse, a shadow of myself, haunting my own home, haunting my own life. I spent my days lost in memories, in nightmares, in a solitude no one could understand, no one could reach. And every night as the sun set and the darkness returned, I would wonder if it had been worth it, if the fight, the sacrifice, the victory, if all of it had truly made a difference. Because in the end, the darkness hadn't been destroyed. It had only been delayed. And one day, I knew it would return. And I would be waiting, always waiting. That is my curse, the curse of the survivor, the curse of the guardian, to live with the pain, with the loss, with the knowledge that the battle never truly ends, and to carry, forever, the shadow of the island in my heart. But even so, despite all the pain, all the suffering, all the loneliness, I would do it all again. Because even in the deepest shadows, light always finds a way to shine. And as long as there is hope, as long as there is love, as long as there is life, there will always be a reason to fight. Even if, in the end, the only victory is the certainty that we tried, that we didn't surrender, that we didn't let the darkness win. And that, I believe, is all we can ask for. It is all we can hope for. It is all we need. The end, perhaps. Or just a new beginning in an endless cycle of light and darkness, hope and despair, life and death. And the island? It remains out there, somewhere in the ocean, a silent reminder that the past is never truly dead, that the shadows are never truly gone, and that the true battle, the most important battle, is fought within ourselves.